It was New Year's Day, 1888. Miles Faucett, a part-time rancher and full-time cowboy, had spent the afternoon visiting Elizabeth and Josiah Potts at their home in Carlin, Nevada. Faucett lived on a ranch about 7 miles outside of town, but he knew the Potts well. After all, he had often boarded at their home. Mrs. Potts had done some baking for the ranch hand. She had even washed his clothes. Faucett had loaned the Potts money. As darkness fell, Miles Faucett rose to go. Elizabeth Potts, ever the cordial hostess, insisted Faucett spend the night. But he was reluctant. He had other chores to attend to, he said. He needed to help a friend haul some hay and finish his evening chores. The friend, J.R. Linebarger, would be waiting, Faucett claimed, for he owed the man $5. Thanking the Potts for their hospitality, Faucett rode off to Linebarger's. Faucett and Linebarger talked over drinks. As Faucett opened his wallet to repay his friend, Linebarger noticed that the wallet was bulging with cash. Faucett had almost $100 in his pocket, a substantial sum even in the best of times. Linebarger was intrigued, but said nothing. But the drinks had taken their effect. Faucett decided not to ride the 7 miles to his ranch, but to return instead to the Potts' home. He had settled one debt this evening. Tonight would be as good a time as any to ask the Potts to repay their debt as well. Miles Faucett rode off into the darkness. Linebarger could not have known it would be the last time he would ever see Miles Faucett again. 3 or 4 days later, Faucett was reported missing, and a concerned deputy sheriff set out for the Faucett ranch. Dismounting, he noticed immediately that the door to the ranch house was ajar. Further inspection revealed that everything of value had apparently been stolen. The deputy questioned the Potts. Yes, they had seen Faucett. On New Year's night, they admitted. But he had been drinking, had been difficult, and had decided to leave Carlin on the evening train. The investigation continued, but there were no leads. Not a trace could be found of Miles Faucett. In September, 9 months after the disappearance of Miles Faucett, the Potts and their 4-year-old daughter, the last persons to see Faucett alive, left Carlin. As the mystery of Miles Faucett's disappearance began to fade, a new family moved into the Potts' home. Soon, however, Mr. and Mrs. Brewer began to notice odd noises emanating from the basement. Mrs. Brewer, a correspondent for the Elko Free Press, wrote delightedly that she was living in a veritable haunted house. Perhaps Mrs. Brewer had had an eerie premonition. 2 months later, her husband made a grisly discovery. In the cellar of the house, George Brewer uncovered the remains of Miles Faucett. The body had been stripped clean of money and valuables, but there was something more. The body had been cut up into pieces. Nevada lawmen set off after the Potts family. After an exhaustive search, the Potts were apprehended in Wyoming Territory and returned to Elko for trial. The courtroom was packed to the rafters, but the Potts had come prepared. The murdered man had taken liberties with their 4-year-old daughter, they claimed. When confronted by the Potts, Faucett had shot himself in desperation. But the jury remained unconvinced. Faucett had been carrying a substantial sum of money that night, and robbery is a perfect motive for murder. The jury deliberated just 4 hours before finding the Potts guilty of first-degree murder. The Potts immediately appealed. sending the matter to the Nevada Supreme Court. They claimed that trial evidence had been improperly admitted, that the jury had not been instructed correctly as to the true meaning of reasonable doubt. The justices reviewed the information, but declined to intervene. In an opinion written by Justice Murphy, the judgment against the Potts was affirmed. The trial court was ordered to fix a day for carrying the sentence into execution. The hanging was scheduled for the morning of June 20th, 1890. A double gallows, constructed in Placerville, California, and hauled overland to Elko in pieces, was set up in a corner of the jail yard. 52 black-edged tickets were distributed to allow favored spectators a better view. But that didn't stop the curious crowd. Those without tickets climbed trees and telegraph poles. They hurriedly scrambled onto rooftops. At 10:44 a.m., the double trap door was sprung. Josiah and Elizabeth Potts fell with calculated precision into infamy. In doing so, however, Elizabeth Potts gained notoriety of another sort. She had gained the dubious distinction of being the only woman ever executed in Nevada.